money like cash is. Get the money like a cash is. Customer, clientele. I was broke, that was last year. Get the money like cash is. Get the money like a cash is. Benjamin, nothing less. I was broke, that was last year. Don't change on me. I never switched up. Been down since day one. Steady so. People change on me. Hey y'all, welcome to Dope Black Thoughts Live. You are here live with Marcus Ivy.
I'm Stefania.
Mike Carter, aka the Paperboy. Good evening. What are we doing today, guys?
Boy, we just be coming up with all types of combinations on this show, don't we?
We're hitting with the skeleton crew today.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm roughing it a little bit. Just forgive me. after Thursday's show is like, woo, what's next, right?
Yeah.
Thursday was, we really didn't do it after show. Thursday was, I spoke to them afterwards. I hope you guys realize how much fun I was having.
Right. Exactly.
Yes, because it was
it was a good show.
They were inspirational. Go ahead.
No, if anybody missed it, you need to go back and watch it and see the topic that we talked about. But we had some really good guests on. If you missed it, go back. It's recorded. Watch it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The guests were inspirational, and they brought their lawyers. Shout out. They brought their lawyers, and it felt good because both of those lawyers, I think I've known one of them for about 14 years, came from the public defender's office. Like that's where they started, and alternative defense counsel. And you're just like, wow, just impressive. Standing up. One of the things we talked about was they were charged with kidnapping. I think F3. Mm-hmm. And that's a real charge with a real number behind it. Right?
Yeah.
It is.
And these two young people are standing up to two different district attorneys, the 17th and the 18th, standing up to the reality of how long they would spend in custody if they lost, and standing up to the fact that sometimes even being right is sometimes not enough to keep you from going to jail.
Right.
So it was inspirational for me. So you guys should definitely check that out if you get the opportunity. It's posted up on Dope Black Thoughts Live.
YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch as well. But speaking of that, just to segue a little bit, I'm sure y'all have heard of that young man by the name of Liddell Lee, who was executed by lethal injection, and then they say after his death, of course, they determined that he didn't.
And they exonerated him.
He was exonerated, and I'm laughing not because this is funny. I'm laughing because I don't know how else to approach this issue. We abolished the death penalty here in Colorado. In that aspect, shout out to Colorado and for all those warriors who were there for that. But that young man was executed, and he, throughout he was like, "I'm not guilty. I didn't do this," and he was executed. And I just tell you, it just kind of blows my mind. And then you take that, I can't remember, I have to look and see what state that was again, but then you take that and you look at where the voice of the people apparently no longer carries weight,
right?
At least in the state of Mississippi, where you had 73% of the populace vote for medicinal marijuana. And the Supreme Court just decides of Mississippi decides they're just going to overturn it. Just going to overturn this, which, at this stage, I'm still curious as to how that can be done, right, when you have such a strong populace in that way. And you're talking about a state that is financially is very, very low on the totem pole in terms of they need services. So services are provided to them. They take a lot of funds from the federal government, things of that nature to get things done. But it just still blows your mind.
Well, one of the things I think we talked about a couple of shows ago about Mississippi, it has one of the highest percentages of African American population, not numbers wise, percentage wise. The population of Mississippi is pretty clear. It's between 35 and 45. It might even be higher. So when we're talking about the will of the people, it's the will of the minority. It's literally a state that is, a huge amount of us. The population faces look like us, yet it is predominantly Republican.
Yep.
Impressively Republican.
Right.
And somehow it can't get any other type of representation out of that place. You would think that would be the easiest state to kind of, okay, we're going to get some type of representation. And no.
Yep.
And they're not one of the states that's trying to impose new voting laws, right? I haven't seen anything about their introduction of new voting laws or changing it or anything like that, which is surprising, although they're pretty happy with what they have.
They're probably like, what do we?
Right. It's been, up until, a few years ago, just going to a football game at a major university, it looked like you were in the 50s.
You know what? Thank you, Sister Guy goes, Ole Miss. Go ahead and look up Ole Miss. Ole Miss. I don't know if they still have the old Reb mascot, but it's literally a old plantation owner. Their mascot was Old Reb. And I think they're still known, the University of Mississippi, because there's Mississippi State, I think they're Bulldogs, and then there's the University of Mississippi, and they are literally the rebels, and not the cool kind, like the secede from the Union rebels.
Right.
Exactly.
And that was their mascot. Old Reb.
Yeah.
Look that up.
That's it. So they have changed up some things apparently. But yeah, that was true. And people keep saying it's about heritage and all this other nonsense. But yeah, you're exactly right. What is the mascot now?
That's what I'm looking up too. I'm like, are they still the rebels? Is it still Old Reb?
Let's see.
Our listeners out there on Twitch, find out what the University of Mississippi's mascot is, and is it still the Old Reb?
It has been replaced, so it is no longer the Old Reb.
All right.
Designed in 1936 and retired. I guess in 2010. Their new on-field mascot is the Black Bear. Yeah. But what's interesting is their inspiration for the Colonel was a guy by the name of James Blind Jim Ivy, Ivy. That's interesting.
Marcus.
You got something to say. But honestly, if you go to Wikipedia, the person who this is after looks like a black man, honestly, from the picture. So I don't know what to say. But the Colonel served as the team's official sideline mascot from 1979 until 2003. Then they replaced him with a black bear at this stage. So that's interesting.
Point of order. Are there any black bears in Mississippi?
Right. Well, are there any golden hurricanes in Tulsa?
Yeah, you got to explain that one to me.
I have no idea. I just went to the law school. I have no idea where that came from.
Golden hurricane.
The golden hurricane, nowhere landlocked, nowhere near a major body of water.
Right.
These storms the hurricanes come off the seas onto land, but it don't go that far. So I don't know what to say.
And they ceased to be called a hurricane at that point in time. We just call them tornadoes. So
yes,
exactly.
You want to be special, but it's just a tornado, sir.
That's it. So yeah. So nonetheless, that it's just interesting to see some of these states. And unfortunately, they're mostly in the South. The reason you probably don't see anything related to voting laws down there is because the state got what it wanted in terms of voting. You know, the question is though, which I find interesting, if you have a 73% approval for medicinal marijuana, are you telling me that 73% also has a tendency to vote conservatively? I guess
That's the craziest thing. That was the point I was making earlier. It's just like I really we should pull up the demographics because I don't want to be wrong. They're how how somebody explain to me how we yell at Republicans for voting against their interests. Mississippi, help me. Help me to understand what's going on and why you are voting against your interests.
no, that's the question. That's it. Let's see what their population is, because I'm curious as well. I guess there's
What
this.
it kind of boils down to, though, is the Supreme Court, the judges on the Supreme Court don't fear reprisal. They don't fear losing their jobs. So they thus have the highest power that they in the land, and they know that they can use it however they want.
Well, interesting thing about Supreme Courts is that at the end of the day, they're still subjected to the rules as made by man.
Sure.
And so the legislature makes rules, but those rules are essentially they're put in that position because of the voters themselves, who in essence make the rules. That's a democracy in that aspect, at least when it comes to that area. But I think there are courts who are taking a more activist role because they are appointed for life, essentially. Now, I don't know if Mississippi Supreme Court justices are appointed for life. I don't know. In Colorado, they're not. There's terms, and they're up for retention at a certain time period. But it's a good, because of that aspect of it. Yeah, they fear no reprisal.
Yeah, so, it's 37%.
37% black.
Yes.
Ah, okay. Interesting. Wow. I guess I would have thought it would have been larger than that.
But there's nobody. But then you also got to remember, there's nobody in Mississippi.
Isn't there though?
No. Dude, there's more people in Colorado than Mississippi.
I guess that would not necessarily surprise me, I suppose, in that aspect. But yeah, I guess that does seem to make sense. But wow, it's only 37% African American. I guess I'm surprised by that. I was expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of at least 49 to 50. But that's interesting. You're right. The state's gender ratio 51.1 or 51.5% female, 48.5% male. That's interesting. Okay.
I don't understand.
The Supreme Court in Mississippi, they do have terms. They're 8 years.
Okay. Oh, really? Okay. Wow.
Yeah, move on.
Well, that's a good thing, because then, at least when you get certain folks off the court, you can make changes.
But 8 years to do it.
Unlike the Supreme Court of the United States, those are appointed for life. So you're talking about generations generally, in terms of before things can be changed. And so I'm sure everyone is watching closely as to what happens with certain laws. Let's say Brown v. Board of Education, Roe v. Wade. Those are things that I think people are watching closely to see what happens in that aspect.
Speaking of Brown v. Board of Education, Marcus, you were producing last Thursday, but before you were getting ready to testify. It was very interesting. Can you tell me, like the bill that was about to come on? And I don't know if Stefania saw this, and what our fine legislature or the members of our legislature did.
Well, it was House Bill 21-1295, I believe. 1295, which basically is a bill that was submitted by Representative Bacon, who is concurrently serving as a Board of Education member for Denver Public Schools, but she was one of the main sponsors of it, which basically wanted to create a rebuttable presumption when it came to whether or not uh, a public school district can reject a charter school application.
Mm.
And so, if you can reject a charter school application, you can reject it for certain reasons.
Mhm.
So, this bill would give you the ability to reject it for if this charter school would, bringing this charter school in would interfere with long range planning. If there's a decline in enrollment and funding, if you still would have to bring them in, you can reject for those reasons. Fiscal reasons primarily, were big issues that you could reject, certain charter school applications for. But what I would tell you is about this bill is there's a lot of support for the bill. How you doing, Omar? There's a lot of support for the bill, but the bill was postponed because a whole bunch of mixed messages went out. So I had been waiting since, I was told in the morning I'd be testifying. Then it turned to 1:30. Then it turned to 2. Then it turned to 2:30. And then 2 other bills were presented before it. And those bills ended at 4:30. And then we were told the bill would be up. And then that bill didn't get on until they didn't start talking about that bill until about 5:30, 5:45 on Thursday. And then somebody was complaining and saying, why don't we just set this over? So it was postponed
Indefinitely?
well, next Tuesday.
Okay.
So that's kind of where it's at this stage. So we'll see. But here's the thing. Why a lot of districts are supporting this bill. They're supporting this bill because right now the standard is best interest. The State Board of Education can overturn any decision if it's in the best interest. But there's no definition of best interest. Best interest is based upon what those 7 members at that particular point in time thinks. And it doesn't matter that you may have 3 charter schools in one area already and they want to bring another one in, and those 4 charter schools are now competing with your traditional charter school. And so, of course, because now we have to share our funds with charter schools, since you have to share those funds with your charter schools, that also obviously reduces funds to your traditional schools. Mm-hmm. And so there's some concerns about that in that aspect as to whether or not, should a district be allowed to say no to a charter school because it affects them financially. And so Aurora Public Schools is in support of that because, it's not rejecting charter schools just to be rejecting them, but it's rejecting them in the sense that if it doesn't fit into long range planning, and Aurora Public Schools has a process called Blueprint, which has been going on since I've been on the board, where the public has spoken as to what they want. Now, if a charter school comes in, they could reverse all of that effectively, and it would change everything. We'd have to go back to the drawing board essentially to start over again. So it's an interesting bill, but I think Governor Polis would probably veto it. Just to be honest, that's my guess. So there you have it. Anytime you get legislation just put out that addresses charter schools, everyone thinks you're anti-charter. And although that's not the truth, that's just what they think.
Right. Kind of lends itself to that.
And that's why I wanted to know what Omar thought, or if Brother Omar saw what the kind of machinations that were going on Thursday regarding the bill. It was interesting to me because I was kind of sitting back watching Marcus watching Marcus being like, okay, they told me I was going to testify at 8. I'm sitting in the office with Marcus at 3:30 in the afternoon, and emails are going back and forth, and I'm just like, something's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're on mute. Omar, you're on mute. Oh.
And that's because I miss y'all. I truly miss y'all. I hadn't seen y'all in a while. I'm coming off Ramadan. Eid Mubarak for those who were celebrating the holy month of Ramadan.
Yep.
What was the bill? I missed it.
Yeah, it's Bill 1295. I think. Let me see.
It is 1295.
Yep, and
21.
It is a bill that. Let me see. Carter, did you pull that bill up?
I just put it in the chat. It's called the Rebuttable Presumption in Charter School Appeals Bill.
Yeah. And so the bill basically allows for a charter school to reject, or excuse me, allows for the district to reject a charter school based upon certain issues, such as financial issues, things of that nature. Here, I was given a little document. It allows you to, if there's a conflict with the district's existing long-term plans, district-wide enrollment concerns, which is pretty much every school district at this stage has enrollment concerns. There's a major declination of students.
Yeah.
We also know that coincides with the major declination of birth rates. Birth rates have gone down substantially, but allows you to reject a charter school based upon fiscal impact to the to your district. Limited enrollment access. There's a number of reasons, and so it gives the district the ability to do that. So in Aurora, there have been several times where we've rejected a charter school, and so the play is I go back, I go to the state board, I present it to the state board. The state board overturns it based upon best interest, and then you have to open that charter school. But there is no definition of best interest. So what this does is this creates, if you will, a standard for which you can turn down a charter school application. And so, you got proponents for it, and you got opponents who are like, well, this will eliminate charter schools, which is not true at all. Sometimes it's just best to look, is this the best time for another school to come into a district? If you already have 3 schools up in this one area, what good does it do to add a 4th? With enrollment falling, so, we lose 800 students in Aurora Public Schools. If we have, I think, I can't remember what our numbers will be, but if we're losing 800 students next year, times the average per pupil rate, that's $8 million that you're losing. But if you're bringing in another charter school with that falling of enrollment, the money that you have left, we have to share a portion of that money with the charter school.
I just want to add a different lens for a second. First of all, Marcus, I appreciate the work you, Kevin, and Dr. Kyla does on the Aurora Public School Board. I am now a new employee of Cherry Creek School District, so I'm more immersed in
congratulations
in these works. But I'm gonna add a different lens, because one way to get rid of charter schools is to make sure that our public schools are doing what's needed so that people won't feel like they have to open up a charter school. There are some parents that come to me and say, hey, I'm judging, do I want my kids studying algebra, or am I waiting to get that phone call before they get incarcerated, or they're getting a citation or something of this nature? Or the fact that now you have this movement of trying to get rid of ethnic studies, Black studies, Latinx studies. There's a national movement to go to school districts. They're putting it under, quote, critical race theory. But if anybody knows critical race theory, first of all, came out of law. I don't think there's anybody at the level teaching critical race theory. But race is a component of our country that's discussed. If you're talking about history, if you're talking about political science, even if you're talking about economics. So we have to make sure that if we don't want charter schools, then we have to make sure that our public schools is doing everything they can to make sure our kids are safe and receiving the best education. That's the best way to do it. I can tell you right now, there are some Black parents who champion charter schools for the simple fact they don't have SROs. They're not worried about their kids receiving citations. They can have a curriculum that they feel embraces all people contributions to society. So we have to begin to say, as public schools, that we have to meet the needs of our community if we don't want to see charter schools just start popping up all over the place.
I was going to hit you with 2 things, and I put a little something in the chat. That nonsense about critical race theory. I think we've had this conversation. I grew up in Texas. So I went all the way from probably middle school to high school, I was taught Texas history. There's a class that we are taught called Texas history. It is a middle school class that you have to learn. And what I put up was there is a portion of Texas history in which slavery had nothing to do with the Texas Revolution. Okay, now let me I put it on record. The University of Texas has one of the largest libraries of just African American history knowledge. Texas A&M has a huge. So it wasn't that they didn't know; it was the populace. Literally, until about 3 years ago, would not allow that to be taught in schools. And so, when I hear critical race theory, I hear knowledge. We are stopping the faucet of knowledge. Race is part of history. If you are going to teach history, you have to teach the whole spectrum and not just one. Second, I believe that a school district with a healthy school district is one of the greatest things for a city, a town, or a county, or a state. It creates, first of all, it keeps those resources in the city. It keeps them in the district. When I see charter schools, sometimes I think charter schools don't do that. But I understand an individual going, I have to do what's best for my child.
Mm-hmm.
And the overreaching thing of, well, what about what's best for everybody's child? What about what's best for everybody's school? I just think that teachers unions are a foundation of, a healthy school district. And I think charter schools are a direct aim at those guys. That's all.
I can see the argument 100%. At the same time, if we're talking about schools that represent everyone, if we want to reduce the number of charter schools, which I am a big fan of our public schools, I think we got people that go to work every single day, teachers, administrators that go with the passion and the heart to educate our kids. At the same time, as NAACP president, I get those phone calls saying, hey, my child got a citation for trespassing and he's a student on campus. Let's think about that. You got a citation for trespassing and you're a student on that campus. And this student wasn't suspended or expelled away from the campus. It was because he got into an argument with his teacher and he walked out the classroom so he wouldn't say anything bad. And the officer seen him and said, you're supposed to be in class. And he tried to explain it, got a little emotional, and received the citation. So these are the types of things that parents think about when they're like, do I want to keep going to court until my child ends up having a record? And we know expungement costs money. We also know expungement is not guaranteed.
And it's not right. It's not automatic.
Well, it's guaranteed for things minus sex assault cases, homicides, major assaults. But other than that, it's guaranteed and it's supposed to be automatic once the child completes it. Now, if you're talking
are we talking about expungement or are we talking about deferred sentence?
Expungement. Expungement's automatic by statute. However, here's the issue.
For certain.
Well, it depends. If you're in county or state court versus, let's say, muni court, it's supposed to be, but it's not always that way in that aspect. So there are some issues with respect to when expungement is when you can get it. And with the change in some of the legislative statutes with respect to that you now as a child, there are certain things you can't get expunged. Yeah, it's devastating. Which, real quickly, which is why next week we'll be having on a young man who I represented, was 15 at the time, and was charged with a child exploitation crime. Didn't do it. Didn't do it. It wasn't even close. We ended up going to trial on the matter. We actually had a visiting judge in at the time who took the trial. And I think everybody in that room, including the DA, said, yeah, y'all win. Y'all going to win. And then lo and behold, convicted, changed his life forever, can never expunge at 15, can never expunge that off of his record. And so I look forward to having him on and giving y'all an opportunity to talk with him. Because if anything, his story is probably a good example for the youth that we're dealing with, and especially you, Omar, seeing a lot of these youth nowadays, especially in the Cherry Creek School District. He's the type of guy who I probably want to take around to some schools and let him talk to folks so they can know what it's like. The system, let's be honest. I mean, me and Carter operate in a system, but it's harsh for youth, and you're right about that. It is harsh,
and especially for youth of color. That's what I mean. Let's just be real. We're talking about not just youth, but youth of color.
I mean, it is. I've had conversations with district attorneys about the problem that Marcus is bringing up. And I wanted to shout out to Representative Weissman. He literally had a bill about expungement that he pushed through. Yep. Our children of color, do not get those second chances that are afforded to maybe another group. Because whereas an incident with one of our children of color arises to all of a sudden some type of government intervention, either a district attorney's talking to them or some type of government intervention, which leads to the question of, can we get this expunged? Whereas there could be other spots where it's just brushed off. It's just, oh, okay, boys will be boys, this happens. It's that constant, the first step is that some type of government intervention, which then means somebody has to do the right thing. Somebody has to do something, as opposed to just boys will be boys. Like, we never get that first chance, let alone that second chance.
I just want to share this. I was in Belize a few years ago, and I was there deciding. I taught a study abroad class in Costa Rica, and we were thinking about doing it in Belize. And so the school sent me to Belize to go check out the spot where I wanted to do.
Okay. All right, Omar. Keep going.
So I'm in Belize, and I'm talking to this gentleman, and I said, he said he had family in Houston. And I said, would you ever consider moving to the United States? First thing he said was, hell no. And he said, because of your criminal justice system.
Yeah.
He says, if I'm driving here and if they think I'm drunk, they're going to follow me home, make sure I don't hurt nobody, put me in my bed, and make sure I'm okay. He said, if I'm in the United States, chances are I'm going to have a criminal record and they're going to take my driver's license. He says, why would I want to go to a country that's that punitive? He says, I love where I'm at. People treat you fairly. And they look at criminal justice as more like, it's not so much criminal justice, because when I was out there, the police officers said, hey, how you doing? How can I help you? They literally were like public safety officers and not police officers.
A military occupant.
Everyone is safe.
Yeah.
An occupying military force.
Yeah, that's what we have here in the United States. It's sad. But he was right on. He's right on. Your friend is right on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know that the Senator Buckner and Representative Harrod were trying to put forth a bill to deal with, let's say, SROs, and it was heavily fought against by definitely the municipal courts and the police departments thereabouts. The saying was that crime will run rampant and free if you don't have SROs in there. But the interesting part about this, because I would probably be on the opposite end of what their thoughts were, is when I was in high school and elementary, and middle school, we didn't have SROs in the schools. If you got into a fight, your biggest concern was
Your mama.
I got you exactly. Not only do I have to go home, I have to pick out the switch
Yeah.
and the switch bush. And of course, you try to get the smallest switch, but no, you told to get the bigger one. That was your biggest concern. And if you got in a fight, you would have, and I was at a time where there was corporal punishment. You could be paddled in school. So that was just, so you not only did you get it at the school, when you got home, you was about to get it again. Yeah. And you didn't involve the police because guaranteed you got back if you weren't suspended or in school suspension. Believe me, you was straightening up at that stage. There was no need for a citation. There was no need to involve you in the system. And so there was a long time before you had that. Now, what folks are arguing is that, well, we had school shootings, we had Columbine, so now we need them. Well, I would argue that you don't necessarily need them in that aspect. I think you do need maybe some, Aurora has we have our own force, if you will, but they're trained differently. They're trained to assess, to help, to assist, before you escalate to the levels of citations and arresting. And that's how they're trained. But it is definitely a touchy and a sore spot with many. Many don't see that having SROs in a school can lead to that school to prison pipeline. There are many folks who don't believe that the school to prison pipeline is an actual thing. They think it's a fantasy. And there are people out there who think that way. And, I tell them, well, I can give you a lot of examples from school.
But that probably comes from privilege. They don't have, they will never see it that way because of their privilege. They don't get to see the pipeline. Their child, give the example, let's take the example that you, Omar, gave earlier about the young man who was yelling at his teacher in class, and he left so that he didn't say something and escalate the situation. In the hallway, if he was met by the SRO officer, he would have been told, go see your counselor, if he was a white boy. Now, because he was a person of color, he was automatically deemed trouble, and let's escalate this to a ticket. Why? Why did it have to go there? Why not send him to the counselor too? Well, and the time to calm down.
Yeah.
So privilege gives that person who said that, Marcus, the opportunity to not even recognize that there's a pipeline there, because they'll never see it.
I just want to tell Marcus, I think I got a few years on you, brother, and if you got paddled, then that means I got whooped.
Well, paddled in school, whooped at home.
No, I got whooped on campus. But let me say this: I went to high school in the 80s, and in California we had a police officer. Actually, I went to 2 private schools, no police officers, and my senior year in the public school, we had a police officer. That police officer never wrote a citation. His job was to make sure there was no shootings on campus because we had all the different gangs there. And then you had the different gangs that was based on ethnicity and race. As a matter of fact, 2 years after I graduated, there were several riots on my alma mater campus. So I'm not a person who says that we don't need SROs. I'm saying we don't need SROs writing citations and contributing to the school to prison pipeline. We need people who are there to care for our students. And if a student walk out of class, how do you make sure that how do you become a person that's intervening or getting the people that can intervene and not write this kid a citation? These are the type of people we need on campus. Because I went to school in LA, I have a little bit of a different thought about that. I see some stuff happen on campus that I'm glad there was someone there that could intervene very quickly.
Right.
I know, Marcus, you went to school in Indiana. I went to school in Texas, and I can never understand why anybody wouldn't take the paddle over detention. I still don't understand. Take your shot, principal. Wow, I gotta go back and play. You have three swats or a week of detention.
3 swats. Like I said, I got whooped. I feel, I'm traumatized.
The problem with that, I was in a small town. That was the you bad like your mama. I know because I was her teacher too. I'm gonna tell your granddaddy when you get home.
Man, yeah, you got it.
The pastor wants to know what you doing in school.
You got it. Hey, did y'all hear about that teacher that, and I forget what state it's in, where she paddled the student, and
with the mom sitting there?
With the mom sitting there, and I don't think the mom was able to speak English. That's what happened.
Yeah.
The mom wasn't able to speak English to advocate for their child.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 people that's paddling the child is talking to the mom in a way that was, that was a little demeaning. And the mom felt like, I don't know what to say. I don't have an advocate here. I don't know what's going on. And now they're thinking about bringing charges up against the teacher.
Take a guess at the state. Come on. Take a guess at the state.
Mississippi?
No.
Florida?
There you go, Florida.
Florida?
It's Florida.
Trevor, right?
Where else does this stuff occur?
Right. Isn't there a rumor too that they took away the woman's child because she didn't advocate for her child against the principal and the teacher? I don't know if that's true. That's just a rumor that I heard.
Wow, she paddled him 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
3 times, and she had a big swing. On top of that, I mean,
I can imagine that mother didn't feel that she had the power to go against somebody in a position of authority, like the principal.
And it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder if the mother was. Is there some immigration concerns that she may have had?
Yeah,
or just culture. Just culture. Other countries look at teachers as if they're like the president of the United States.
Yeah,
we're the only ones that stand on our teachers and try to beat up the teacher so we can have a world star video. You don't see that happening in other countries,
right?
You have to ask yourself, where did that begin? Because there was a time I grew up in your era, Omar, and there was never a time that I thought that I could stand toe to toe with my teacher and say something out of my mouth because, like I said, I feared my mother. I knew that she was going to have it. She was going to have her way with me, and I was not. Look, my mama was a cool woman, so she was the great intimidator. But where did this happen that we now have not only the student going up against the teacher, but the parents backing the students going up against the teacher? Like, if I was mouthing off to a teacher, my mom would have me. She wouldn't go in there and have it out with the teacher and say, you let her say whatever she wants to say, you're wrong. Where did that happen? Where did that break come in?
I have.
I'm curious.
I'm a little speechless because I do know when I was teaching high school and middle school, there were so many laws and so many regulations that restrict a teacher from being able to advocate for themselves in some cases. They
also stripped the parents too at one point in time. Remember, my dad would walk around with a belt around his neck and walk up to that school and would whoop me in the school. I wasn't that bad, but if my brothers were bad, they would get whooped.
I got some questions.
Right. How bad was it? But they can't do that. Parents were arrested on campuses and told you
that's what it was.
Child. So we took the power out of the parents' hands and put them in the SRO's hands.
I gotta say, my mom was like a ninja with a belt. She pulled it out like a sword, and don't run, just take it.
Yes.
No running.
I'm not gonna chase you. Like I'm not gonna chase you.
Right.
You run till you get tired, and you come on back. Take this spanky, take this whooping, but you're tired now.
And then she love you, fix you the biggest dinner in the world, and all that stuff, and say, "Hey, here's the reason why you got that."
Right.
Like, I love you, right?
Right. It wasn't you did something wrong, and we're gonna correct it.
Exactly.
Although sometimes I thought some of them teachers lied just to see me get my butt kicked. I ain't gonna lie. I think it was a little entertaining for them.
Oh, yes, it was. It was. There's no doubt about it.
But your mom say, leave no room to the devil then. Stop acting up even a little bit.
Oh, my goodness.
But Marcus, as a school board member, let's think about that. how do we empower teachers in the school to be able to discipline the student without it turning into a crime?
That's a great question, and honestly, I've actually spent some time thinking about this, just because you've seen so many videos where teachers are being disrespected by students and so forth, because you can't touch them, you put a hand on them, that's it, you get sued and you get fired and everything else. But I think we're going to have to empower the teachers by giving them the authority to do certain things, give them a list of things that they're able to do. And that may be, if you're talking about athletes, give them that ability to say, well, grades not reaching, you got to sit down for a game, or, attitude, everything else, you got to sit down for a game. I think if you implement that type of authority, something along those lines, that will assist. However, we know in certain places like Texas that I'm sure if you threaten to take the star football player down, you probably be without a job. Yeah. So I think you have to be able to empower teachers publicly by giving them their authority publicly, so everyone can hear, here's what authority you have. And you put academics above all. And unfortunately, sports are above academics, things of that nature. So that's what it is at this stage. But right now, unless some of the laws change statutorily wise, it's just going to remain the same. These are laws that can be changed and addressed at the state level, which will obviously matriculate down to the local level. But right now, don't know how to at this point.
I would just like to add that I think we have to do something, because I know when I was teaching school, there was a kid that squared up at me, and this was in the classroom in front of the students. Now I was younger, so I probably handled it in a way I shouldn't have. but at the same time, we have teachers that come in there with the greatest intent, which is why I love our teacher unions, why I love those who protect teachers, those parents that go out. I actually think it should be mandatory that there's a certain amount of parents volunteering every single day on campus, sitting in the class. There's a difference if there's a parent sitting in there, even if it's not your own child parent. That classroom change if people know Miss So-and-so don't take no mess, or Miss So-and-so don't take no mess. And last but not least, I also think we have a bunch of retired veterans who are looking for something to do. Let's empower them to go to our schools and sit in the classrooms and engage the kids and help diffuse some of the things that are taking place.
That's the difference between charter schools and public schools. And I know that, Omar, you talked earlier about our public schools are great, and I agree with you. But you and Marcus touched on the reason why charter schools open up is because you have that one parent who's like, well, what about my child? And a lot of charter schools, at least the one that I sent my son to, parent volunteer was mandatory. We had to do so many hours in the classroom. We had to make sure that we knew exactly what our kids were doing. We had to volunteer on playgrounds, parking, traffic, and then in the classrooms. So instead of being locked out of the classrooms like in public schools, parents are locked out. You got to make an appointment to come in to see. You can't surprise your kid anymore. You can't pop up and say, you better be acting right because I'm going to come check on you. You can't do that anymore because the schools are locked down. The parents aren't allowed. You have to make an appointment. They got to announce your appointment that you're coming. Your kid is on their perfect behavior by the time you've been announced that you're coming in to look at them. And the teachers don't want you in their classrooms because they don't want to have to be exposed. And I'm not saying that every teacher is like this, because like you said, we have some great teachers with the best hearts, the best intentions. These jobs are hard. I certainly don't want to face a classroom full of 25, 16-year-olds and 14-year-old, 12-year-olds or anything like that. But, they announce your arrival. So now your kid's on their best behavior. What do you do? This is why charter schools have been popping up more and more and more.
But, I mean, it's the involvement. It's that willingness to be involved.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, public schools don't allow the parents to be involved.
I don't think that's the case for all of them.
Okay.
I just don't think that the mechanisms are in place to encourage it, I guess would be a better way to say it, at some of the larger districts. But it's not even complicated. The more involvement the parents have with the school and the curriculum, the better the students are going to perform. That's not, something that's only charter schools. That's children. That's teaching. If you go to school and the only time that you encounter that material is right then and there, the only time you encounter that discipline is right then and there, well, when you get home and there's no extension of it, you're going to lose some of it. You're just going to lose some of it. So the more involvement that parents have with schools, and the larger school district should be reaching out to get more volunteer involvement from those parents, it'll have a better outcome for the kids.
Well, when you talk about the kid leaving school, depending on their environment, it's the environment sometimes immediately as soon as they walk out the gate. It's the environment of walking home and you seeing prostitution, you're seeing drug dealing, you're seeing murder, you're seeing yellow tape all over the place, you're seeing all these different things that has some type of impact on the child. And then you expect for that child to do homework when they get home, or you expect for that child to be thoroughly disciplined when they get home. And now you add social media traumatizing our youth. I really think we have to look at education and have a component of public health to help our kids get through the system now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and Aurora's done that. We've brought in 100+ mental health professionals that was paid for by
congratulations.
And we're about to give teachers a raise. But we understood, at least this board has understood, that you have to have that mental health component in here for that assistance, especially now after this COVID. You got to have that mental health component there to assist these children. I worried about my youngest, being on the computer all the time, and so we had to come up with something different. Now he and I are playing disc golf, just to keep his mind going, so he's not sitting in front of things. But and he's getting him back in school. So now that he's eligible for the vaccine, which is, I guess 12 now, but he's 15, so he can get that now. I'm worried about his mental health component. That's been my focus as well. So I'm with you.
Well, it's that whole Marcus. I think Jaden's 2 years younger, so this was his middle school year. This was his 8th grade year. I have 3 kids, and 13, 11, and 8, and they just kind of lost a year. As a group, they just kind of lost a year. And while I believe the youngest will be able to, just kind of open personality, she'll be able to make it up, get back in there talking to people. I had just like your son, Jaden was completely active in sports, and then for a whole year, nothing. And I don't know, I wouldn't even know how to kind of talk to him about that. Okay, you just went from, think about the transition from middle school to high school. You just went through a middle school year in which you had no contact with any of your friends and any of your peers. Now I'm going to throw you into a high school with the age ranges from 14 to 19. You have no contact with your peers. There's social. I don't want to use the word socialization, but becoming part of that group. You lost a year, and they're not going to give it back to you. And I don't know how to have that conversation with my kids. One of the things I've told Marcus before is, at a certain point, we have to apologize to our kids for how we were behaving during the pandemic, because I don't think we were doing them any favors.
Right. I was talking to a few people in Cherry Creek, and anybody remember when before Mount Bello got closed down or whatever they did to it, they used to have their 9th grade come like a summer bridge program, like a week or 2 early. Then they bring in the sophomores, and then they brought in everyone else. And so you're able to phase people in. They know where their classrooms are at. You don't have like 1,500 to 2,000 students all on campus at once. I think for our kids to, especially our middle school kids, kids that are entering high school that had to do their freshman year on Zoom or whichever, I think we need to slowly begin to bring them back, because when you just bring everybody back, that's when you have your discipline issues. And it's not that the kids are bad; they just got all this pent up energy, ain't seeing each other. So some of them are still traumatized from a lot of other things, and I think we just need to slowly bring kids back in stages.
I like that.
That's a good
Yep.
thing.
So Omar, so just tell us. So what are you doing now?
Oh, he didn't explain to us what his new job was.
I'm gonna say this. Did y'all notice I don't have a tie on today?
Yeah.
I noticed that. I was looking hard.
I still got the blazer on, but I didn't wear the tie today. Truth is, I put everything in the cleaners today. But with that,
I've been there. I get that.
literally put everything in the cleaners today. But I'm the director of equity, culture, and community engagement for Cherry Creek School District. And one thing I'm impressed about Cherry Creek School District, they put together a whole team. There's an assistant superintendent, another director, and a bunch of partners we're working with. And they're really taking this inclusive excellence and this whole thing about just having an inclusive school district, an equity-minded school district. They're taking it very seriously. So I'm looking forward to the journey. And the fact that they put resources behind it tells me, at least from what I'm seeing right now, that they're serious.
Yeah. That's that is it. Wow. Okay.
And you don't have to wear a tie.
Huh?
And you don't have to wear a tie.
I wear a tie every day to work. Like I said, I put everything in the cleaners. And the one shirt that I had, I said, wait a minute, that's gonna be my Sunday shirt, because I got to do 2 speeches tomorrow. So I said, okay. I'm not used to being back in the office every day, because we're still out at CU Denver.
Oh, wow. Well, isn't it the end of the semester? Isn't it over?
No, Cherry Creek. Now I'm gonna tell you this: we had our first indigenous high school graduation ceremony. So students in the district that were from different tribal nations, from Hawaii, Pacific Islander, all that stuff. Nice. We had our first ceremony in Cherry Creek where they were able to recognize their culture, speak in their language, receive gifts from the different tribes. That's how they're putting it down out there.
Nice.
That's what's up.
Makes for a long ceremony, though, doesn't it?
Excuse me?
I said makes for a long ceremony, though, doesn't it?
No, actually, it was an hour.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It was an hour. They did everything. Everything was planned. The superintendent was there. A bunch of principals was there. A bunch of teachers was there. And nobody was turning their nose up like, They were out there truly celebrating the kids.
Good. That's good.
Good.
That's it.
Inclusive excellence. Is that what they call it? Inclusive excellence.
Inclusive excellence. They got it all over the website.
All right.
Now I got to go to there. Okay. All right. That's what's up. I'm just proud of you in that aspect. So
thank you, brother.
That's just good work. It's needed work. And no doubt about it. So that's, I kind of want to ask you some other questions, but I don't know if I should.
I'll tell you what, let's do that offline. Yeah. Since I just got there, and I already got a big mouth. Let me get a month in before I get in trouble, okay? Just a month.
Exactly. No doubt. So any Dope Black thoughts before we end this? It's kind of a laid back show. Actually, I really enjoyed the conversation. We had some variety, but we talked about what was important. So no doubt.
I'm gonna shout out the protesters and the rock stars that came on Thursday. Wow, impressive! Like I said, I am impressed at what those protesters did and continue to do.
100%.
What was made very clear is they're not done.
Yeah.
That's our job to protect them. It's our job to watch out for them.
You're
Won't
right.
go into a whole lot of detail, but that's our job.
Yeah, they're getting in good trouble, and we appreciate that. And I'm going to be joining them. So
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, and that was, to me, that did it. That was the thought there. That was a powerful show on Thursday, and so really enjoyed that. Was being able to watch that from the background. So if there's nothing else to our nice small audience today, forward this to your friends. Have them come back and watch it. Some interesting discussions today. But look out next week, though. We're going to have an interesting discussion. Like I said, a young man is going to be on, and a young man whose sky was the limit, literally, because he wanted to be a pilot, to now just being in and out of. If there's ever an example of school to prison pipeline, that was this case. So
unfortunate.
with that, we say Dope Black Thoughts out. Peace.
Music.
What is love? It's a drug. Let it rotate, then get back in. Calling me an Uber just to get back in. Use the cash out like fake. I spend it. Is it really worth the wait? I don't get it.